my little writing on the mirror, just like yours, that I see in the morning. That is a little reminder to, hey, like, go out there and be brave. Don't mess around. Live it up. And so here we are, many years later. Jessie, not so brave, land-lubbing mother. Jessie's still trying to be brave.
It's very loud. I'm on Falcon. Hello, shipmates. It's 8:45 the night before crew arrive. I'm in the Galapagos on anchor. The fans are running. The water maker's running. So if you hear some background noise, Aiden's being noisy in the corner over here at the nav station trying to get Expedition working. We're off to the Marquesas. Well, by the time you hear this, we'll be somewhere probably more than halfway across the Pacific. But I'm recording this the night before crew arrive. We're going to leave on Monday. And the Galapagos is an amazing place. We had a couple sea lion encounters on the way back from dinner tonight, which you cannot avoid here. It's hilarious. They're like cartoon characters. Anyway, I'm pre-recording this stuff because I'm going to be off the grid for a couple weeks. What am I trying to say? 59 North, what's happening here? I think by now, the 2027 Falcon calendar should be live on the website if everything goes to plan. Again, I'm pre-recording this, so you never know. So check that out at 59-north.com. It'll be on the homepage. You can find it there. Also, I'm fairly certain there's a better than good chance that I'm going to be sailing Gotland Runt this summer on Tapio Leitinen's boat. Tapio, of course, did 1.5 Golden Globe races. His boat sank halfway through the second one, and he did a full Ocean Globe race on his Swan 55 Galliana. And Galliana is the boat on which we're going to do the Gotland Runt. And I believe there's going to be some crew spaces available for you guys if you want to join us. We're going to run a 59 North style trip on Tapio's boat. This is not set in stone yet, but if you want to sort of pre-register, you can sign up and just put Gotland Runt 2025. And it's, like I said, it's a race I've wanted to do every year. I didn't finish it last year on Spica, and it would be very cool to do it with Tapio, a legendary sailor on a very, very cool boat. So there's that. And, of course, all the other stuff we're doing, boat shows coming up in the fall. You can find all that on the website. I won't bore you. And just some context on this episode, Jessie Zevalkink, she's going to be co-hosting the show now, helping me out because I'm away a lot and August is on parental leave. Jessie has been a friend of the show since 2017 when she was first on the podcast. She's been on twice since then, I think, and this is an interview where we talk about what she's been doing lately. She's been living land life, and she's got a kid about the same age as Axel. So we talked a lot about parenting and what her life has been like. She's trying to get back into sailing, and this is one way to do that. So Jessie's going to be on next week with her first episode as host with Bob and Jody Bitchin, the founders of Latitudes and Attitudes magazine, a couple that I've wanted to have on the show forever. She knows them quite well, and we talk a little bit about their friendship in this episode. All right, that's it. I'll see you next time you hear from me. Will be from the Marquesas, I think, in the South Pacific, if all goes to plan. All right, until next time, hold fast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to On the Wind. This is Mia on the podcast intro. Andy's been away since April 1st, and I've basically taken over his office and his recording equipment. So yeah, as you probably know, he's out sailing on Falcon, and they are just about halfway around the world from where I am in Sweden, and they should make landfall in the Marquesas in a couple of days. It sounds like they've had a really good passage. They had a bit annoying light wind and lots of squalls in the beginning, but the latest I heard was that the big kite was up overnight, the big bright pink kite, and they've had epic stars the last few nights, so I'm excited to hear about that. Since we don't have Starlink on board, I haven't actually spoken to Andy. I've just been getting emails daily from him and updates that we post on the blog, so excited to speak to them when they are getting in. I'm the one running the office at home, and we do have some fun news at 59 North. Last few weeks, we opened up some new passages at the end of 26. We'll sail north from San Francisco up to Canada, back down to Mexico, and then end the season in San Diego. And that is our last hurrah in the Pacific, because in 27 we are going back to the Atlantic. And we just opened up our 27 calendar last week, right before Easter. It's going to be great fun. We're back in the Atlantic, like I said, and We're starting the season in San Diego, going through the canal, and then up to some favorite places like Key West. We haven't been there since 2019, I think, on Eastbourne and Ice Bear. Up to Bermuda and then Annapolis, and then over the Atlantic with Arc Europe. This time we're sailing into the Baltic and to Stockholm for the first time as well on Falcon. And it will be great fun for us to show her off to our friends and family close to home, as we live only an hour away from there. So it's pretty crazy to think that right now she's halfway across the world in the Pacific, and in 27 she's going to be back close to where we live. Anyway, you can book your space in 26 and 27 now, and you can see the full calendar if you go to 59-north.com/27. It is Easter Monday as I am recording this, and I am now heading up to my parents' house to have Easter dinner with my family. So, until next time, hold fast.
This season of On the Wind is sponsored by Weather Routing Inc., aka WRI, 59 North's longtime weather routing and forecasting friends. Personally, my relationship with WRI goes all the way back to 2008 when I first started working with World Cruising Club on the ARC Rally. WRI were then and continue to be the official weather routing forecasters and partners of the World Cruising Club events, and it was only natural that we continued working with them when we started 59 North. WRI is run by a bunch of true weather nerds, and I mean that in the best possible sense of the word. Their team of forecasters is as dedicated to weather as we are to sailing and seamanship, and no matter how comfortable I get with analyzing my own weather sources, it's nice to know that we always have the professionals looking over our shoulders. For the boat owners out there or anyone crewing on a passage, WRI can provide customized routing and forecasting tailored to your own boat and your own sailing style. I find their service most useful for helping us find good departure windows. To learn more and sign up for WRI, go to WRIWX.com and tell them that 59 North sent you. That's WRIWX.com. This season of On the Wind is also sponsored by BoatHowTo.com, an educational website co-founded by longtime friend of the pod and sailing tech guru Nigel Calder. Nigel, Jan, and the Boat How To team teaches you how to be self-reliant on the water and save money by fixing things yourself. Boat How To currently offers 2 in-depth courses on marine electrical systems and marine diesel engine maintenance, both Nigel's area of expertise. And in fact, our own Adam Brown, bosun at 59 North, has been exploring and enjoying both. By now, almost 3,000 students from 85 different countries have taken the Boat How To courses, and various boat building schools have integrated the courses into their curriculum. All 59 North sailing staff have access to the course as well, and if you're a member of our quarterdeck, you get a special discount on the courses. There's no better way to master your boat's systems. Check out the courses at BoatHowTo.com. That's BoatHowTo.com. You're listening to On the Wind, my podcast about offshore sailing. I'm your host, Andy Schell. Longtime friend of the pod, Jessie Zevalkink, returns to the show ahead of her debut as host of On the Wind. We first met Jessie back in 2017 at the Annapolis Sailboat Show, interviewing her after she'd completed the Great Loop with her friend Katie. As happens in the sailing community, we kept running into her, and starting next week, she'll be co-hosting the show. I caught up with Jessie to talk about life after cruising, single parenting, and how she feels about filling in as host on the podcast. Yeah?
Yeah.
Here we are. Well, all right. So we'll get straight into it, Jessie. The whole point of me interviewing you now is because we reconnected quite serendipitously. I don't even remember how. I'm going to ask you that in a second. And you're going to actually be co-hosting the podcast. So I thought we would reintroduce you to the audience and talk about how that all came about. So tell the story, because I forget already. How did we actually what was the context of us reconnecting in the first place?
Well, hi, Andy, and lucky to be here. Thank you so much. Super excited to be a part of this. And we serendipitously reconnected because you emailed me to ask for Bob Bitchin's contact, who is my pseudo grandfather. He's not really. He just kind of became a family member to me over the years of sailing and took me under his wing and started working boat shows with Lats and Ats and started writing for them for many years. And then you and I
So wait, give some context. Who is Bob Bitchin for those not in the know?
Bob Bitchin was the owner, editor of Latitudes and Attitudes. For a while, it was Cruising Outpost, and then back to Latitudes and Attitudes. We're going to interview him in the future, so we'll let him tell the full story. But he's a sailing legend. He's an absolute sailing legend. He's the guy that's 6'3" or 4", and pushing 250 pounds, absolutely covered in tattoos. And he got going with Biker magazine back in the, I don't even want to quote the decade because I probably would be wrong, but a long time ago he started with Biker magazine.
Well, I was going to say he looks like a motorcycle guy. Like when you see him at boat show, he stands out like a sore thumb.
And he's just a big teddy bear. He's the sweetest man on the planet. He just turned 81 a few days ago, and his wife Jody is just a ball of energy and joy, and they're the funnest couple ever. But yeah, they ran Lats and Ats for a long time, and I would say if anything put my sailing on the map, it was via Bob Bitchin and him kind of saying, "Hey, you can write. I want you to write for me, and love your story." And they were excited, and that's what got me rocking and rolling in the sailing industry outside of just personal sailing, which ultimately led me to connecting to you. I mean, but that was kind of by chance in Portugal. We ran into each other in Lagos, Portugal.
Well,
we
ago. Actually met. We met before that. When I sent that email to you today about the podcast, I was like, "When was the first time I met you?" We met in Annapolis at the boat show. I think at your aunt's house. That was actually before Portugal. Yeah, that was in 2017.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we sat and did a podcast together at Annapolis and then later ran into each other, I think by chance, in Portugal.
That was by chance, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then saw each other again in Antigua very briefly at Anchor. And then, yeah, I guess I would have run into you maybe once more at the boat shows over the years.
I don't remember Antigua. What was the context of that?
It was brief. It was really brief. We had all recently crossed the Atlantic. I was aboard Desiree with Luke. Mia was working on her Yacht Masters there.
Oh, okay.
She was just finishing her program, and we had just made landfall, and we were all anchored in the. You'll remember the bay. I can't remember it offhand.
Falmouth, I guess.
Yeah. What's the other one on the south side?
No, that is Falmouth's on the south side, and right next to it's English Harbor. The little one
it was English Harbor.
The cliffs and stuff. Okay,
it was English Harbor. Yeah, and I think that was the last time we saw you. You guys, I think you were on Ice Bear.
It would have been Ice Bear then, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to think. I was like, it wasn't Eastbjorn.
Well,
yeah, so we ran into each other again there.
Eastbjorn was there as well. That was like the first time I think we had both boats. I mean, God, so much has happened like in both of our lives since then, but it's hard to keep this straight. So anyway, back to Bob Bitchin and me. I emailed you trying to like plan, okay, because Bob's never been on the podcast and I've only met him, I think, once at a boat show once. And I was like, all right, we got to get in touch with him. And I think it was also because I was trying to reach out. I was trying to find a way to get to Morgan Freeman, who is the actor, who is a sailor. And I had seen an article that someone had written about Morgan in Lats and Ats. And I was like, okay, digging in the archive here, who do I know that has some connection to that and down the line? And that's how I reached out to you. So anyway, take it from there.
Yes. Okay. Good memory. You said you don't remember. It's all coming back.
Back.
Lats and Ats had Morgan Freeman on the cover for their, I don't remember what year anniversary. Maybe it was 20-year anniversary issue. It was a big issue, and they got an interview with Morgan Freeman, and he was on the cover. And that was what sparked you to say, oh, I should reach out to Bob Bitchin. Who knows Bob Bitchin? Jessie Zevalkink knows Bob Bitchin. And I was stoked to see an email from you because I've been having my own little pity party about what the future of my sailing life looks like. I recently sold my boat. We'll get into that in a minute. But I closed out that email saying like, hey, hankering for, trying to figure out what the future of my sailing life looks like. Keep me in mind if you ever need help, if your team is ever growing, or if you ever need help as far as podcasting, writing, photography. I wasn't even really thinking of sailing passages at this point because I have a 4-year-old. It's a little bit harder to jump away. And that was where the stars were aligned, because you immediately came back and said, actually, I do need help with a podcast. And good chance I could get you on a trip as a photographer. And here we are. I'm very excited about it.
I love when stuff like that happens, because I tend to run my whole life around like gut feeling type of things. And like, I barely know you, but I feel
so far,
I don't know. I feel confident in this relationship and how that you can help us. And I don't know. You just present. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. Like I said, I'm
no
very
pressure.
confident. Exactly. But I just love how these kind of things just, you put stuff out in the world, and I'm a big believer in that. Like, you can't really get where you want to go, where you're trying to go, if you don't put stuff out there. And like the fact that you put that out there and then I just responded to it. I love when that kind of stuff happens, because how would have I known that you were, I had no idea what you were doing.
No, I agree. And sometimes you do just have to take a chance on a feeling. And I think, so much of opportunities come from taking chances on a feeling, and taking chances on a feeling of trust and a feeling of opportunity. And it doesn't mean you have to know the person through and through, but we've had just enough conversations where I think that chance felt good for you and it felt good for me. And yeah, I certainly didn't expect anything out of it. So it's very exciting and a bit of a dream for me to kind of step into this little part-time role of co-hosting and whatever opportunities you chuck my way.
It's cool too, because like as our team has grown, I realized kind of by default that I'm the last American standing, other than
Not
Mia,
anymore.
who's like I know. So it feels pretty good to have another fellow countryman on the team with me, even though Mia's technically American, but like she'll never be actually American. She's got a passport, but she's Swedish.
Does she have citizenship?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. She got her citizenship
So Axel
in
will have both as well?
2016. He has both.
Eventually?
Yep.
He does both.
I'm waiting on my Swedish citizenship. I applied over 3 years ago and I'm still in the queue. So, but I have permanent residency here, so it doesn't really matter.
Good enough for now.
Yeah. So so that's where we're at. That's how this started, and we spent a couple hours yesterday going over the technical stuff, because you've been a guest on the show. This is the third time, but you've never actually done anything quite like this. And I guess that begs the question is like, why do I think you are suited for this? And I think,
why am I suited for this, Andy?
Well, you've been a really good guest in the past, and I think you're a professional photographer in real life. And
yes.
You even made a mention to me that like part of your relationship building with your photography clients is like drawing out their essence, so to speak. And that's really what the podcast is about as well. So talk a bit on why do you think that you'll A, enjoy this as a host, and B, be good at it?
I love this question because I feel oddly confident in this role, because it seems just like a mini sidestep from what I already do in my daily professional life, which is create conversation, guide conversation, be curious, ask questions, and extract information from people. And it often ends up being quite personal information. And the conversational approach to photography is my distraction method for photography, if that makes sense. And so, I mean, my goal is for you to forget that you're being photographed, because we're having a lovely conversation along the way. And so much of the photography is happening as the conversation is happening. But it feels less I'm in a photo shoot and more I'm in a conversation with a new friend. And so I think what makes a good documentary and storytelling portrait photographer is someone that can help you forget that there's a camera in the room, and that someone's taking a picture of you, and that someone's documenting it all, and allows you to feel really safe and trusted in your home. Because a lot of time I'm walking into people's homes, I'm walking into their intimate space, their parenthood, their marriage, their professional life, wherever it is. And it's fairly vulnerable space for people, like you're not always inviting strangers into your home to photograph you. And there's a lot of pressure around that. People are paying money and they want to pretty story. There's pressure around all of it. So, it's my job to release the pressure per se and create a really comfortable space for people. And I've learned, I'm going into year 10 right now of portrait photography and wedding photography. And if I've learned anything, it is that it is in my nature to make people feel comfortable, and to make people feel heard and noticed, and to also really humanize myself, and imply like my own personal stories within the conversation that I'm creating for other people, but without without making myself the center. It's not about being the center, but it's also about being relatable to the person. And so I don't know. I love a good conversation, man. I just love a good conversation. So this to me is more good conversation with people that I've been paying attention to for years, and looking forward to all the people that I don't yet know about. And I can taste and feel the experience of a lot of these sailors, having spent a lot of time out there myself. And I'm in much more of a land-lubbing chapter of my life, which is beautiful and in its own ways. But I can also feel what the people out there are feeling, and I miss it dearly, and it's very much part of who I am. So that was a long-winded answer to why I might be okay at this.
You hit the nail on the head though when you talked about like you are both in order to get a good result from the subject, in your case photography, in our case the podcast guest, you have to simultaneously insert yourself into the conversation, but in a way that's very unobtrusive. So like I've always said, the less that I talk in an interview, usually the better the interview. But at the same time, you can't just say nothing, because you have to create that humanity between the two of you so the person opens up. And that's a very, very fine line, because a bad interviewer will make the entire thing about themselves and pull it back. And, interestingly enough, I was partly inspired a long time ago when I started this show about listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast. And I actually think he's a very good example of someone who inserts himself too much into these conversations, because, he's a celebrity and he's famous for that. And that's kind of his thing. But I think Conan O'Brien's a good example of how you can do that well. But he still, I think, inserts himself. He's got his own podcast now as well, besides the show. And I think you can learn from both sides of that. Like, how can you insert yourself just the right amount so that you can generate this humanity, but not make it all about you?
Yeah, it is. It's a tricky balance. And I think, another trick of being the interviewer is not overthinking and spending too much time thinking about the next question, because it eliminates your ability to really listen to what they're saying. And so I think something that is really good practice is to, when the person is talking, really try to listen instead of spending those 20 seconds like trying to dig up the next question, because there is an element of that has to occur to continue to guide the conversation. But it's also very distracting in your own brain when you're thinking about the next question, and when you're thinking about how it applies to your life and what story you can tell after the other person has told their story. It is tricky to find the balance of when to insert your personal stuff. And it's the exact same context with photography, where I want to insert my creativity and I want to create images to my liking, but I have to be very careful there, because it is most important that whatever experience I'm creating for the person needs to match their mood, their personality, their characters. Is the kid hungry and need a break? Is mom stressed out because her kid's not behaving? Like, how can you kind of adjust and move to create the experience? Because when you create the good experience, that's when the good photos happen, versus forcing, quote unquote, a good photo in the wrong moment. So it's easy for me to find parallels between these two things, even though they're different subjects.
How did you come to photography in the first place?
I carried my camera around like my phone before I had a phone, I'm kind of right on the cusp of the digital age. I guess I just turned 36, and my high school graduation present was my first like good digital camera. Started photo class in high school and loved it. I was a painter and drawer as a kid. I was a total art kid in high school. This is way before any sailing interest began or any technical side of my life. So artiste first, or just creative, passionate creative, got a camera, and it just went with me everywhere. Like, I feel like that's a really simple answer, but it came with me everywhere. And it wasn't until I was about 25, after, I'm going to jump around a little bit on you here, after I finished America's Great Loop, and I documented that trip pretty well for its time. Again, this is pre-YouTube, pre any sailing channels, right on the verge of any kind of, sailing media being what it is now. I had a blog, katieandjessieonaboat.com. And I photographed it all and I wrote about it all. And when I finished that trip and came back to Michigan, I was 25 years old in a relatively small town where I knew a lot of people. And, friends were getting married. It was like that time. Friends were getting married, more friends were getting married. People were starting to have kids. And I kind of just started saying yes to this, yes to that, yes to everything, before I believed that I could make money from it. So it was very hobby-esque. And I actually kind of had to pull my thumb out of my own ass at some point and realize, like, people are asking me how much I charge and people wanted to give me money. And it took me years to figure out how to put numbers to photography and how to turn it into a business. I've become a good businesswoman. I was not. It's been a decade of trial and error and just like self-taught experimenting. You know how this goes, entrepreneurship. So, the photos and the creativity side was natural and came first, and the business was a big learning curve for me. And now 10 years later, I'm pretty dialed in and it's been going really well for a little over 5 years now. I would say 5 to 7 years. It's been fantastic and my main source of income, and I still love it.
Two questions. What's your favorite thing to photograph, and what's the hardest thing to photograph in the professional sense, like what things you're paid to do? Yep.
The answer is, I don't want this to sound too vague, but it is people, and it is people. So I love people. I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by sociology and psychology and all of the things and why people are the way they are. And I think observation and curiosity is what makes a photographer a good photographer. So I love photographing people. My favorite shoot is when I feel most connected with someone and they're excited to be there and they're confident in their bodies, they're confident in their relationships, and you can just extract all the joy and all the good stuff. And the thing I hate the most is when I feel like someone's not having a good experience, or they're really hard to crack open, or they're really hard to extract any information from, and I'm just like pulling. So without it being like a direct, I like photographing families versus weddings, for example. Everything to me has to do with the personality of who I'm with. And that makes it or breaks it for me. Like, I will walk away, or I will walk into a photo shoot exhausted, not in the mood, and walk out of the photo shoot so happy and just being like, God, my job is cool. And it's that person, it's the personality that was just like such a joy to document. Or I can walk into a photo shoot all chipper and in my, walking in my best self, and just really, really struggled with that person and walk away feeling pretty like, oof, I'm already not stoked about this session and these photos.
The parallels to the interviewing people are uncanny, because
same.
What you just said there about, like, I always get nervous and anxious before an interview that I have scheduled, and almost 100% of the time I leave the interview thinking like, God, I love doing this. It's so inspiring to talk to people. It just lifts you up. It's so much energy about that. It's amazing how closely that is. Do you have an example, like without giving away anybody's privacy? Is there like a particular photo shoot that stands out to you that kind of gave you the best of what you just mentioned there?
You know, there's a handful of smaller weddings that I've photographed recently that were just so full of like joy and honesty and no fluff, no nothing extravagant, with like two beautiful families coming together. You know, I think on a wedding day, there's a lot of family dynamics going on. You know, sometimes parents haven't seen each other in 10 years. Sometimes parents haven't spoken 20 years. Sometimes someone just lost a family member. Emotions are high. And that can bring a lot of stress or sadness or overwhelm. And so occasionally I come across a day where there's just like excellent family dynamics and friendships and relationships on both sides. And it's just like a whole body feeling and experience. And I can go through a whole day, I feel like just like really riding the waves with them. I'll laugh with them and cry with them and laugh with them and cry with them. And I feel like those days are very special. And I've had way more than one of those. You know, those happen every season. I feel like I get a handful of wow photo experiences where I walk away feeling incredibly lucky to get paid for witnessing everything I just witnessed, because it's joyful work. You know, for the most part, I'm working with people that are coming up on big milestones in their life and really stoked to be there. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky, man. It's pretty cool.
That's oddly parallel to the sailing side of our business, where you're basically with people that are participating in what is a bucket list major life thing for them, and you get to experience with them, and that's that same kind of energy we get on the boats, which you'll find out. I guess you're going on Eastbjorn from Faroes to northern Norway, Lofoten, I think, right?
You guys, I'm going on Eastbjorn from Faroe to Lofoten. Is that how you say it? Lofoten?
Yeah, Lofoten. Ask
Lofoten.
August. He'll know. Lofoten.
Okay, I'm glad you said it first. I was worried about butchering it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I've never been to Faroes. I've been to Lofoten on the way to Svalbard, but never been to Faroes, so I'm a little jealous.
What a freaking dream. Yeah, I'm still pinching myself. I've been wanting and needing a good challenge like that. Just a good physical out there in the elements in the cold. I miss it, and it's time.
When's the last time you've been on a big sailing trip?
My last big sailing trip they've all been fairly stretched out. As you know, it's like the season's kind of broken up, few months here, few months there. But my last bigger journey was aboard an Endurance 44 from San Francisco down to Galapagos. And so the last bigger stint, I guess, was Acapulco to Galapagos, and that was in 2022. Yeah, my son turned one, and he turned one in Puerto Vallarta, and we sailed down to Acapulco and prepped for Galapagos, and then we sailed with him Acapulco to Galapagos, and stayed in the Galapagos for almost a month. And then after that, it was life aboard the boat, but not actively cruising, and returning the boat to Michigan, actually, and then doing some charters here in Lake Michigan, and then eventually selling the boat. So my live aboard life was really consistent for almost a decade, actually, from 23 to about 33. And I've had a lot of changes in the last few years, starting with school and homeowning and business building and being here in Traverse City on land.
Well, I know you just breezed through many years, and there's some heartbreak and stuff in there as well. I know you don't want to go into too much detail, but how open do you want to be about how you sort of transitioned from that live aboard cruising life to where we're at now, which is kind of roundabout how you got reconnected with us, because you were missing that. So did you want to speak to any of that?
Sure, I can certainly shed a little light, but I will shed a little light very sensitively, as it is still fresh and sensitive. And just due to all those factors, I'd like to be careful about what I say and how I say it. But if I could sum up the last few cruising years of my life, my former and I were incredibly dedicated to the sailing life. That is how we fell in love, and that is what kept us connected. And that was the one goal that we shared, was life at sea and to raise a kid at sea. And we were diligently working towards that goal, to the point where I think we suffered a lot of consequences from it, and we maybe prioritized it above all else, when maybe we should have focused on us and marriage and parenthood and finances and the list goes on. It is a very tricky balance to manage all of those things. And if you're not on the same page about it, it slowly deteriorates. So my summary is that as I was externally and publicly building a really, really beautiful sailing life, and, essentially a successful split between land and sea, which is hard to do, as you know. Like, it takes a lot of intention and a lot of strategy and a lot of planning. It doesn't just happen. And it was just kind of years in the making of like, okay, then we're going to sail here, then we're going to do this, and then how do we come back and fund it, and the list goes on. And as all of that was being built and working, our marriage was slowly deteriorating until it essentially exploded for a little while. And I ultimately ended up responsible for the majority of our lives. That has taken me the last year and a half, 2 years to a year and a half, to put back together and kind of just rebuild and recreate. And I ran a season of sailing charters on our sailboat last summer, which was fun. And I don't want to say it was unsuccessful, but it required more than just me. It required a team. It required 150% of me. It required more time and more money that I was able and willing to give, as I was managing 2 other businesses and a 4-year-old. And so I think, like, we all reach this point in our lives of complete overwhelm. I don't know if I would want to call mine burnout. I was burnt out, but it was complete overwhelm. And a lot of that overwhelm was just coming from the responsibility, like the heavy responsibility that I was carrying to manage all the things, and just a constant 24-hour need of correspondence for different businesses and childcare and, all the things. So I had to start taking stuff off my plate, and that meant taking things off of my plate that I really loved. And one of those things was, I can't charter this boat. I can't run this business. I have to sell it. And that took me a while to admit. I think I had to spend a year trying to do everything myself first, and make sure that it was too much. But I knew pretty quickly it was too much. You had to learn the
hard way.
Yeah. And I think I probably spent a good 5 years just slowly adding things to my plate. And I'm sure you felt this very thing. It's like you get used to operating at a certain capacity, and you get used to kind of being a high functioning, overly productive, entrepreneurial brain. And you can kind of keep adding just like little bits of food to your plate for years and years and years. And then eventually you're just overflowing, and it's like I didn't have or build the support system I needed when I was adding to my plate. I just kept adding and taking on and taking on and taking on, and then we all break, right? And I found my breaking point, and really had to start just clearing out and simplifying. And that was the last year and a half for me. And I've found a lot of peace. I've simplified a lot. I've brought on a full-time assistant for my photography business, got rid of a business, started school, yeah, things are going really well. So I finally, in emailing with you, I finally reached a point where I was like, all right, I can maybe just add one more little thing to my plate, which will be helping out you guys.
Have you been able to reconcile, like, with yourself, the fact that you had this plan and now it's changed? Like, how, do you regret anything? Is there any sense of, I mean, there must be a sense of loss. Leave the relationship part aside. Obviously,
Yes.
that's a major sense of loss. But when it comes to the sailing side of things, you know, your life isn't what you had hoped and planned for. So have you reconciled that?
I appreciate that question. And no, I haven't. It's on my mind every single day. And I don't regret any of it. I fortunately, I'm not a regretful person. That's not a feeling that I carry very often. You know, like if you ask me, would I go offshore sailing with a 1-year-old again? No, I wouldn't. Am I proud that I did it? Yeah, I am. I don't regret it at all, but I can't say I'd go do it again, and I can't say I'd recommend it to anyone. But I'd probably be a cheerleader for you if you asked me, you know? Do I regret needing to move on with my life and make all those changes? No, absolutely not. I was a hollowed out version of myself, and anybody who knew me closely knew that, saw that, felt that. So no, I don't regret it. But am I sad? Yeah, very, very. And, you know, I'm a good 2.5 years into having a wonderful therapist, and I've come a long way. I've come a long way, and I have a lot to be grateful for. And so I am actively sad about a lot of the changes, actively excited about a lot of the changes, and actively like very aware of what I do have and what I have to be grateful for. So I'm more of a grateful person than a regretful person. But yeah, there's a lot of sadness and grief, I think, that comes along with not having the life that you worked really hard for, and not being able to see that all come to fruition when you shared the dream with someone, and rebuilding a new one. I'm rebuilding a new one right now.
So I'm gonna as a host now, I'm going to try to relate to you. I'm gonna do this now for a second without making this about myself. I invite
you to make this about yourself.
I talked about this with Emma last summer when she interviewed me on the podcast, where it's not the same as what you just said, but this idea that like your life didn't turn out the way you had planned, where Mia and I had been setting up this, 59 North with this business, and we were doing all the sailing trips, and I had this vision, like Axel was part of that vision. He's 5, he just turned 5 the other day. But I had this sort of romantic idea that like Mia and I would take turns sailing, and then the other person would meet in a faraway land and with Axel there, and you'd have this back and forth, and like that that just doesn't work. Yeah. And I never allowed myself to think that there might come a time where I'm not as excited to go sailing as I used to be, which in one way is good because it means I am actually excited about what I have here. We're in my land life, and there's some things I'm not happy about and other things I am. But like you asked me the other day, I'm actually ironically going to the Galapagos. That's my next big trip. Ooh. I'm meeting Falcon there and sailing to Marquesas, and like I should be really excited about that, and I am, but I'm also really excited about what I'm building at home with our new boat we have here, this gym community I keep talking about. So it's been hard for me to reconcile, like, this is not what I expected my wants and needs to feel like, and now I'm having to sort of start from scratch. Like, okay, thankfully, along the way, we've built a pretty successful business, and I have a lot of choice. We were conscious of the fact that we needed to build a team. There was no way we'd be able to continue doing this, just the two of us, if we wanted to also have a family. And that took a long time. And I went through, I don't know how much you've listened to the show the last couple of years, but I went through deep depression, and I still have a therapist, and I was on medication for a while, and I'm only recently coming out of that myself. And I guess the point of this being that, like, it doesn't matter how much you plan. You never fucking know. You never know what's
No.
going to happen or how you're going to feel about what's going to happen. Because like I would have never predicted that, and that's like, what do they say? The only constant
It's
in
just
change is
heartbreaking.
life is change.
Yeah.
It's just interesting, I guess. I don't really know where I'm going with this, other than that it's interesting.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, the point is there is no predicting how parenthood is going to change you from the inside out. Like you just can't forecast it. And it's not something you can have any feelings about until you experience it. And everybody has a very different experience with it. And I think as people who have done a lot of really high risk things, there's big dreams and big ambitions. And when things don't turn out the way that you spent all these years dreaming and envisioning, it is dare I say, a grieving process of like, oh, I didn't get what I thought. Like you could have done those things, for example. Let's say that, right? Like you could have done these things with Axel, but as you became a parent and as it was becoming reality, you learned that it wasn't worth it. The risk wasn't worth it. It was gonna, mess with your marriage. It was gonna mess with the dynamic of business. It was gonna mess with and then all of a sudden, like it becomes too disruptive and not worth it. And then that's the where you slowly start to say like, I can't have it the way that I wanted. And it's just sad. Like it's just sad. Like there's nothing more to it. It just sucks and it's sad. And you have to step back and say like, but look at what I do have. And, I really appreciated, you guys did a year in review. I think it was a 2024 year in review. You and Mia did. And, just a little shout out to her, by the way. She's so positive, and I feel like she's also really pragmatic. And she said
say
something,
the least.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that about her. And but something she said was just so true. I wrote it down, and it's like it's not about you can have it all. You just can't have it all at once. And I couldn't agree with her more. And you just have to accept that you can't have it all at once. You can't have your family together all at once and also be running the sailing business that you're running. You can't be offshore and also experience that with your son at this chapter of life. And so how can you break up your year to have it all, but you have to split it up? And that's just what it looks like now. And that just takes a long time, I think, to adjust to that.
Where do you put yourself on the pragmatic versus romantic scale?
Oh, I like that question. And I don't know if I have a gut answer. I'm a little muddy. I'm somewhere in the middle there. Somewhere in the middle. I've been told that I live with rose-colored glasses on, which kind of pisses me off because I don't know. I can't quite tell if it's true. I was like, well, if you don't live with rose-colored glasses, like how are you going to, get through life without a smile on and without dreams? Like you gotta believe that things are possible, and you gotta believe that people are good, and you have to believe that like bad things happen for a good reason. I don't know. You know what I mean? You just have to.
But is that a choice or is that just your instinct? Because like that can be either. You can just be instinctively like that, or you can choose to be like that.
I feel like I'm instinctively like that. Like it's very unconscious. I'm a benefit of the doubt kind of person, and I believe that people are good, and it's very rarely gotten me in trouble. I mean, I can't even come up with an example of when it's gotten me in trouble, really. If
but
anything,
are you conscious of the fact that how lucky it is to be? Because I think I'm that way as well, instinctively, and I think we're very lucky to have that, because it would be hard to force yourself into that mindset, even though you can.
I am aware of how lucky I am, because I know plenty of people, some of those people, very close to me, who do not move through life that way. And there is a level of stress and anxiousness and worry that simmers in them every single day that I do not. And I think it's because, living with a very trusting and positive outlook on life, like that is what gives you opportunities in life. And I think one thing that a comment, I guess I've written about this before, a comment that I've received a lot in my life that I have a hard time accepting and I don't like to receive is, "You are so lucky." You're so lucky that you can live this way. You're so lucky that, and I will graciously say thank you, but internally I'm thinking it's not luck. Like, this isn't luck. Like, no part of my life is just luck. Like, it's been very intentional, I've built it this way. And I think if I practice, it's like practice and exercise. And like, it not just lucky. I create, you might call it luck. I'd say opportunity. But that comes from trusting that there is good in the world first. And that's really hard to do right now. It's really hard.
So I agree with that luck versus intention completely. I mean, there's stuff like I go back, I've got a big plastic bin full of old handwritten journals that I've kept over the years. And, you write something down in there, it's stream of consciousness, and you tend to forget about it. And a lot of the things I used to write down was like ideas and goals and things like that. You write it down and forget about it. And then when I go back through those and look in there and see how many things I've written down that I'd completely forgotten about the second after I turned the page have actually happened, there has to be a link there. There has to be a link between like writing something down, thinking about it, and then it happening. Like that can't be a coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, where do you think your drive for high risk adventure began? Because I feel like it starts somewhere and then it grows and grows and grows until you're doing things like sailing to Svalbard and sailing to Antarctica, and all of a sudden taking on the responsibility and the risk of having paying passengers. I mean, it just keeps getting, the stakes and the consequences grow in time, but like somewhere there was a taste of something, where you became addicted to, in our context, offshore sailing.
Well, this is like the central theme of this entire podcast. It's two main questions. It's what was the inspiration behind the thing that you did, and what makes you different to actually go and do the thing? Because like a lot of people have ideas. I mean, this is the central theme of the whole thing. I guess this to me is where the lines blur between like luck and intention, because I was brought up in a sailing family, in a sailing household. Like my parents took us cruising when I was 9. Like that was luck that I had the parents that I had, and that they were the ones inspired to go do this stuff because they did it first. I didn't come up with this idea myself. So I was like incepted at a very young age that this was the kind of life I wanted to live. And then I guess where the intention comes in, it's like at some point I realized that I probably specifically, having worked on the woodwind in Annapolis and been given a book by John Kretschmer by one of my deckhand friends, shout out to Pete. And I was like, holy shit, like I didn't know this is a thing, that you could do this. And that was then all I wanted to do was get on a boat going over the horizon and see, I'd sailed circles around the bay on the woodwind, and all I wanted to do was sail over the horizon. I wanted to see what it would feel like to be out of sight of land. That was my initial motivation. And then that I followed through with it to the extent that I did. It's just that's how I was raised. I was raised by my family to basically follow through on things and follow. I've said this a million times. I have a tattoo on my wrist that says "Hold fast to your dreams" in my mom's handwriting, and my mom was the romantic, and my dad was the pragmatist. And my mom said, "Do what you love, and the money will follow." And my dad said, "Whatever you do, be the best at it, and you'll never not have work."
I mean, those are pretty brilliant little birdies on your shoulders.
Yeah. So the luck is like that. I had that growing up. I was raised in a very inspiring, and they gave us all the opportunities, and then it was up to me to do something with it, I guess. But I don't even know. Like, I don't think anybody's ever asked me the question of why was I different? Why did I follow through on it? And like, my only answer is I had to. There wasn't a choice. Like, it was just what I was gonna do. I don't know why. I just did. There was no other option. This is what I'm doing. And I guess my grandfather was like that, in the sense that like when he set his mind on something, he did it no matter what. And that's, I think, what comes in conflict now with with the family stuff we were just talking about is I have to temper that internal drive because I want to, actually, not because I have to.
Yeah.
Nobody's pressuring me to. I'm still able to do whatever I want, but I'm finding that I'm tempering it myself because my priorities are changing.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great answer, though. That's a great answer. And I think me, very similar to you, my luck was the same as a kid. My dad had a Pearson Invicta 37, and our family trip every year was taking a week or two to go sailing in the Great Lakes and up to the North Channel in Canada. And I spent every summer on that boat just as a boat kid, not with any interest in the sailing aspect of it, but an excitement.
Same for me, weirdly.
Yeah, I didn't care about the sailing, but I was stoked to be on an adventure and to go swimming and play on the rocks and bring friends. And and that was my luck. And also had, two parents who were very happy for me to take any opportunity. They weren't pushy. I got a lot of freedom. So yeah, I think the adventure bug started for me as a kid too, but it just didn't really come to fruition until my 20s. And then it just went wild.
Have you allowed yourself, I know you're still sort of picking up the pieces and reprioritizing what your life is going to be, but have you allowed yourself to think further ahead and dream bigger?
I mean, yeah, every day a little bit, like you though, what I want right now is just different. I want calm. I want peace. I want stability. I want, my community and my friends and my family. And that is what's most important to me right now. But I would say for all of my 20s, everything needed to be bigger, better, riskier, scarier, braver. I felt like my 20s and into my early 30s, pre-kid. I'll just say that. Okay, pre-kid, I was really, really willing to push my limits and find out what I was capable of. And that started for me when I was 19 or 20 and left art school to go to flight school. And I spent a few years in flight school, which kicked off my adrenaline bug. That became the addicting element of my 20s and ultimately turned into sailing. And then my 30s, I said I just turned 36. My 30s, but particularly the last 2 years, I feel proud of what I've accomplished so far, and I feel like I need a rest. I feel like I need a rest and a recovery, and like I'm going to come back strong in my 40s. That's how I feel. I got a big 40-year-old dreams.
I am 100% projecting when I ask you this question, but do you ever feel embarrassed at how sort of cliched your like hopes and dreams have become as a parent?
Yep. But I love it because I feel so relatable to humans. I feel so much more human. I feel like when I was jetting off to cross the Atlantic or jetting off to sail to the Galapagos with my baby, you become like almost unrelatable. And a little bit crazy to people, and people aren't sure if they love it or if they're disturbed. Do you know what I mean? And some people just don't even know what questions to ask because they don't understand what is required to like survive at sea. And you just kind of, you can lose connection with people. And I felt like I did my very best to not just share pretty photos, but like put some solid context in writing to describe like, hey, here's a beautiful photo, but this is what was really going on in this situation or in this moment. Because I think sailing can become really unrelatable and unattainable and untouchable to a lot of people, particularly women. And so I always wanted to humanize it, and that's still a priority to me. So actually taking a little step to the side and just like having a kid in school and parenting and being part of the community, you know, the family and parenting community here in Traverse City has felt really damn good. I love it. And you've mentioned that too, just like how important it is to find your little community in Sweden and be a dad. And like, it's rewarding in its own ways, and it's emotional and tiring and all of the things that sailing are in just a different way, you know?
Yeah. The community thing, I've talked about this a lot too. It's what I never realized is how difficult it would be to find other people to relate to in a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had this dream of traveling and living, it was a no-brainer to me that when I first met Mia, like, sure, I'll move to Sweden. That sounds awesome. That's what I wanted. And like, it still is. But like when you're of that age, like when we met, I was 22, like it's all very exotic. And now that I live here, there's nothing exotic about it at all. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh, here I am. I'm this like sort of sticks out like a sore thumb American in a foreign culture, and it's hard to make friends. It's like, shit, this isn't what I asked for. So you've had to then, that's an instance where I've had to like actually consciously flip my brain into that I am going to be optimistic about this and I am going to make the best of this, because it's so easy to fall down that rabbit hole of like, you know, depression and thinking bad thoughts and all the rest of that stuff. And I actually have on my bathroom mirror in our house, I have 3 words written in Sharpie marker that I see every single time I walk into the room. And the first is, it's patience, it's consistency, and optimism. And those are like the 3 reminders I give myself multiple times a day of how I want to think about things. And
which one is hardest?
This is the easy for me, is the patience. I don't have any patience. I have no patience for anything. So that's the hardest. And I mean, they're all hard. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
The consistency, it's hard to do the same things over and over again, but that's what gets you long-term results. And you pick whatever you want to talk about. And then the optimism is just like reminding myself to think the best of everything, which is also hard to do sometimes.
It is hard to do. I mean, what steps, we know there's been therapy, there's been some medication, exercise, it sounds like. What steps have you taken to kind of get yourself out of your hole and realize, you know, what you have is really beautiful? Well,
the biggest challenge was like in a vacuum, I think I would like to live somewhere where there is a much more like ingrained sailing culture. Sweden as a country has a very big sailing culture. Where I live is not that. We live on a farm in the middle of nowhere.
Farmland. Yeah.
And ironically, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, far away from a sailing culture as well. So I'm having to like force myself to, like, we want to live here for the family benefits. Like being near Mia's family, being close to the airport. Yep. There's a million practical, and this is where the practical versus romantic thing comes in conflict, because I'm definitely romantic. So, but having accepted that, okay, this is the general area where we're going to live. There is no sailing community here in what I'm talking about. So, okay, where else can I find that? How else can I find that? It's going to be it's the gym. That was the single biggest thing in the last year and a half that's changed my day-to-day happiness, is finding a community of like-minded people that we share this passion for, basically. And I'm still working on the rest, honestly. Like, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's the other side of this is I built this business that now requires that we're all distributed. I'm sitting here talking to you from 5,000 miles away, and you get so much more benefit from being in the same room as someone. Like, I am a major proponent of people working from an office somewhere. I just think everybody that says that it's better off working from home, it's not. Trust me. Like, it's not. It's not, because to be surrounded by people is the key to happiness. I am discovering that, and it's why it's such a contrast in our life. Like, when I go out to Falcon, I'm going to be surrounded by people intensely for 4 weeks. For that one crew. And then, so you see that side of it, you see the benefits it gets you as a human being, then to be cut off from that for 9 months out of the year, it's you know what you're missing. It's almost like it's a milder version of like what military people talk about when they come back from deployment, where they've been in this with this tribe of people all towards the same mission, and they come home and they're like lost. Like I understand that feeling, not at that level, but that it's the same. It's on the same continuum of like humans are meant to be in groups and working together towards a mission. You're not meant to be sitting in a fucking office by yourself staring at a screen. Like that's what I've learned. The biggest thing in the last 2 years.
And that's a conversation that we've kind of had on the side that we need to shed some light on, I think, on this podcast, which is, discussing in depth and more, maybe a little bit more scientifically, what happens to people after they are coming back from such a massive mission, whether it's a around the world voyage or a first ocean crossing, or you could relate it to any extreme sport, but of course in our context it's sailors, and how many accounts of sailors who have come home and found themselves deeply depressed, and I know I've certainly experienced that in my own way, post America's Great Loop, post Atlantic Ocean loop, post every circle I've ever sailed. I've come home and it's like a whole confusing restart of like what happened to my everyday problem solving, purpose filled mission that keeps your brain and your mind and your heart so busy, and then you come home and you're like a lost little kid.
Yeah.
And it's such a common theme. And I look forward to finding a good way to discuss that further on the podcast in the future. But I feel like that's exactly what you described, but you're experiencing it annually, it's like, or seasonally. It's like
cyclically,
you get, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so how can you get your isolated farm life to match the highs of your sailing life? And
it's never gonna
like for you, that's finding some sailing community.
It's never gonna match. That's the thing I've it's never gonna match. It needs to complement it. Like it can't be what it can't be. It's easier to define what it can't be than what it can be, but what it can't be is me coming home and just biding time until I go on the next adventure. Like it can't be that. That is no way to live. It cannot be that. It's never going to be the same thing. Probably the most inspiring times we have now is we did this for the first time last year. Everybody got together that works for 59 North on the boats. We all got together for a long weekend in Portugal and talk about like everybody like coming together for a mission, working. Like that was the most inspiring, fun weekend I think I had all year. And poof, it was over. And then everybody goes their separate ways. And like now, you're never with that. I think there was 12 of us there. You're never in that big of a group with those people except for once a year. Because when you're on the boat, you're with your partner, your first mate, or your skipper, or whoever. So finding ways to, I guess, kind of fulfill that need to be with a group of people all working towards the same goal in the interim, because I know I have that a couple times a year, but to find that in the interim that's like what my life's mission is about right now, in addition to the family life stuff like that comes with it. But like this idea that I have discovered for me that fulfillment comes from that idea that you get with a group of like-minded people all working towards a similar mission, be that at the gym, at a local sailing, whatever. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, I used to have golf. Golf was the thing before sailing. I thought my career was going to be. So like, even though I can't picture you with golf club. I'm a 3 handicap. I'm a very good golfer. And that might not mean anything to you, but I am a very good golfer, and I enjoy it. So like, that's one of my things this summer. It's like, okay, well, I'll just go start playing in some local tournaments and see who I meet and see what I find. Cause you got to put yourself out there. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, you will create that though, because you will create it because you have to consider what you and Mia have already created over how long has 59 North been in business now?
It's 10 years. This is our 10th year, 11th year, 25. We've done 10 years. Yeah.
10 years, and look at what you've created. So I think, the biggest thing is really acknowledging what changes you need to make. And that's really hard in itself, because it's like you can know that something's off. You can know something's off kilter, off balance, but not know exactly what it is that you need to add to your life or remove from your life. And you know your answer. And so it's just going to take some time to figure out how to get more of that in your land life. And I do remember hearing you say that about getting everybody together in Portugal. And it's just a huge like reality check of what you guys have built and who the team you've brought together. I mean, just what a talented handful of people you've gathered. Full of experience and wisdom, and also young and enthusiastic and not too salty and burnt out. You know what I mean? Like just an excited group of people who have so much value to offer to everyone that comes on your guys' boats. And I mean, I felt proud for you guys listening to you talk about it. I don't really have a team for my photography business. I have one right hand who helps me with everything, and I can't even imagine what it would feel like to have a whole team. So, yeah, is there a world where you can gather maybe quarterly? I don't know how that would build into a budget, but gather quarterly and just get a little bit more of that fix in your land life than you have now.
Well, this is a perfect segue and maybe a great place to wrap this up, is that you're now a part of this team, and I am delighted to have you on the team. And I hope we talked a little bit ago about maybe you coming to Annapolis for Boat Show, because that is my probably 1 and 1A favorite week of the year for the same reason. It's the best. So I am very excited to have you on the show, and these conversations are great. I'm very excited to also be able to listen to the show as a fan instead of just a host. I'm excited to see who you interview and how it works out, and what questions you ask people, and what I can learn from what you've learned through all of your life experience and how you apply it to this. So I'm delighted to have you on the team.
Thanks, Andy. I am too. Count me in for Annapolis. I have a few details to work out, but I'm 99% in and really excited about that. Would love to get some podcast interviews on the books for that weekend. And I'll be doing a little bit more social mediaing about all of this once we get rocking and rolling. I think my first interview will be released when? April 22? Was it April 22?
Something like that. April. Yeah. Okay. Our next season starts. Actually, well, this is going to come out. I don't know when this is going to come out. This is probably going to come out at the beginning of the next season. So your next episode, if you're listening to this, it will be probably the next week. So like this, your first episode will come out the week after this airs because of the way the schedule works. We're recording this in March.
Cool. And I also hope everybody enjoyed a nice little break from full sailing talk today. We had a little bit more of a therapy session here.
That's right.
And I can also plug in my socials for you. Oh, I do need you to ask me one question, though. This is when you say, Jessie, is there any questions that I didn't ask you that I wish you would ask me?
Jessie, is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to espouse on?
Yes. I want you to ask me why my nickname is Jessie Brave.
Do you know, I was going to ask that. Why? Okay, perfect. And I think that's your Instagram handle as well. So how did you come up with how come Jessie Brave?
Okay, the answer is not what you would expect, which is why I feel the need to shed some light on it. When I was 15 years old, I was on a chairlift at Crystal Mountain in Michigan with my two best friends, Katie Smith and Olivia Gilmore. And on the chairlift, I divulged some exciting news to them that I had lost my virginity. They started telling me that I was so brave. They couldn't believe it. They freaked out. And they said, "You're so brave. Oh my gosh, you're so brave." And all day as we were skiing down the hill, they basically were mocking me, like they weren't being serious. So it started as a joke. They started calling me Jessie Brave because of this brave act that I did at 15 years old. And my nickname became Jessie Brave after that. And then 6 years later, no, oh gosh, 8 years later. 8 years later, I am in year 1 of America's Great Loop with one of these same best friends, Katie Smith. And I do not yet have I get an iPhone for the first time. I don't have Instagram yet. And Katie Smith creates me an Instagram account and she calls it Jessie Brave. So I have felt some need to uphold this name. It is my reminder to be brave, and not a nickname that I ever coined myself. And I love it deeply because of its hysterical roots. And it is like my little writing on the mirror, just like yours, that I see in the morning. That is a little reminder to, hey, like, go out there and be brave. Don't mess around. Live it up. And so here we are, many years later. Jessie, not so brave, land-lubbing mother. Jessie's still trying to be brave.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Great.
You're welcome. So my Instagram is @JessieBrave. That has been all my sailing content over the years, which has been pretty quiet recently, but excited to crack that back open. And you can also access my photography page from there, which is @Jessie Zevalkink, and we will spell that out for you in the show notes.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Jessie. Really great talking to you.
So good talking to you too, Andy. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks again to Nigel, Jan, and BoatHowTo.com for sponsoring this episode of the show. Check out all their courses at BoatHowTo.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show. Thanks again to WRI for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Go to WRIWX.com to get in touch for your next forecasting or routing need. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also occasionally by Nikki Henderson, Jessie Zevalkink, and August Sandberg. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Ads are read by us, the hosts, and occasionally by 59 North's bosun Adam Brown and podcast producer Lee Cumberland. And once in a while, Mia. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest, sailor, and musician Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends Storm Weather Shanty Choir from Bergen, Norway. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
The horse, I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said, last time you was paid up with me, you talked up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Once more, once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you the chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any horse. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.